Re-releases and special editions of albums are pretty common. It's a way of reselling a favorite album while giving something new and interesting to the fans. You can have remasters, bonus tracks, or even a full remix of the original album to show a brand new side of the original. Sometimes they're a blessing, and sometimes less so, but they all provide something interesting, something worthy of scrutiny. My name is Michael, and across this series we will be looking at various remixes of famous albums, and how they shed new light on their source material and even improve on it, or fail to live up to its expectations. This is
Just a remix.
Last episode we began a look at Pink Floyd's album remixes, starting with their 1987 album A Momentary Lapse of Reason. But today we're stepping back in time to 1977 to take a listen to an album that is, at least outside of the general Pink Floyd fan circle, a severely underrated one, Animals. Now, amongst Pink Floyd fans, this album is far from underrated. In fact, by now enough people love it as much as I do that the phrase Animals is underrated is as much of a joke to Floyd fans as Let Down is underrated is to Radiohead fans. Comprising of 5 tracks, 3 of which well exceed the 10-minute mark, this is Pink Floyd at their most anti-capitalist, raging against corporate greed on dogs, taking shots at Margaret Thatcher and Mary Whitehouse on pigs, and advocating for just straight up eating the upper class on sheep. Most people point to The Wall as the third in the great Pink Floyd trifecta, the other two being The Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, obviously. But I honestly think it should be Animals. It's punchier and still feels like more of a band effort than The Wall does in places. In 2018, seemingly unprompted, producer and longtime Pink Floyd collaborator James Guthrie announced that he was working on a new 5.1 surround sound mix of the album, which would release soon. It would then take 4 years for this surround sound remix to see the light of day, owing to some frankly hilarious beef between members Roger Waters and David Gilmour that would be great to go into, but isn't wholly relevant to this video. The point is, when this 5.1 mix finally saw the light of day, it also came alongside a brand new stereo mix, also mixed by Guthrie. This was pretty exciting to me. Animals is a fantastic record, and the original mix of it isn't bad per se, but it is occasionally unclear, and the drums don't ring out with the same clarity on that album as they do on other Floyd albums from around the same time. This seems to be a sentiment shared by the band. Drummer Nick Mason once suggested he didn't believe the album to be up to the sonic standard the band held themselves up to. I mean, the way I see it, their oops we screwed up the mix moment still sounds heaps better than some people's best mixes, but I'm still excited to see what the album would become with an all-new mix. So what are the results? Animals opens and ends with a song named Pigs on the Wing. However, we won't really discuss those because it's just Roger Waters with an acoustic guitar. There isn't a whole lot you can really do to radically change those in the mix. So instead we'll leap into the main body of the album with Dogs. Right off the rip, we're in a promising place. Mason's drums have been brought out from under the murkiness they were in the original album, ringing out with a gorgeous clarity. Hearing the dynamics of Mason's playing really breathes a new life into the track and allows you to appreciate his work on the song. It's not always complicated. Mason was usually a more subtle drummer, but all the same, it's exciting to hear. This clarity also goes for a lot of Gilmour's guitar work, which roars to life on the new mix. In some of the more synth-heavy sections of the songs, Wright's playing is also highlighted beautifully. On the new mix, you can hear subtleties in how he plays that just aren't present on the original record. Overall, the key word with this remix so far is clarity. The dynamics have been greatly expanded, allowing us to hear subtle details that were buried in the more muffled mix on the original album. The same goes for Sheep. The drums crash to life as never heard before, energizing the track. The synth drones in the background of some sections buzz with an all-new edge. But here there are a couple of more exciting changes. In the instrumental section of the album, the parody of Psalm 23 has been altered. Now, Gilmour and Waters' voices are more clearly audible from under the vocoder they are treated with. This honestly makes this section a little more creepy to me, and therefore a heck of a lot more effective. The finale of the track has also been altered. On the original mix, the final guitar riff explodes into the track, notably a lot louder than the track has been for the past 8 minutes. It's meant to be an explosive finale, but the distance in loudness is pretty jarring on the original mix. Here, it's been changed. The guitar is still loud, driving the finale forward, but now more comfortably so. It isn't so loud as to be jarring. Now, it feels more organically woven into the track. The The ultimate upshot of this remix is that the clarity has given an album an all-new bite. This was already Pink Floyd at the more aggressive end of their spectrum. After all, it contains lyrics where Roger Waters calls Margaret Thatcher a fucked up old hag, and ends Sheep with the call to trample on oppressors' necks. On the original album, this rage is there, but is somewhat kneecapped by the muddier mix. Now, with the benefit of the more open dynamics and clear presence of the drums and some of the synths, that bite has never been more palpable. This album feels properly angry. These changes are no better felt than on Pig's 3 different ones. Once again, the drums are brought out with an all-new clarity. They're so clear, in fact, you can hear Mason's snare rattling from the vibrations of Gilmour's bass in quieter sections of the song. And again, some of Wright's synths have been given an all-new clarity as well. In the instrumental break, one of them buzzes ominously in the background. But on this track, there are a couple of even more exciting changes. A synth and VCS 3 part from Wright that was all but buried in the original mix is brought out, shaking the bass end of the recording with a beautiful menace. Gilmour's bass guitar, which is incidentally some of the coolest bass guitar in the band's history, is brought out from under the mix, driving the track forward with all new purpose. On top of all this, a harmony from Gilmour that was either buried or muted entirely on the original mix is pulled up, adding a great new tension to the verses. Overall, Pig's 3 different ones is transformed by this mix. While it was a song I didn't mind in the original album, the remix gave me an all-new insight into it and made me fall in love with it. The instrumental break in the middle is especially improved by this mix. While it was pretty awesome on the original too, the build-up of it as captured by the remix is now one of my favorite moments in the whole Pink Floyd canon. However, for all the praise I've heaped onto this mix, it does commit one major sin, one that prevents me from calling it a definitive mix of the album. It does Richard Wright very dirty. Now, I've heaped praise on the treatment of some of the synths on this remix. Overall, yes, a lot of the time they sound great, but you may have noticed the use of the term "some of." This is because more frequently than not, Wright's contributions to the album have been buried. This is the major uh-oh moment I had with the remix when I first listened to it. Before the full album was released, Pink Floyd dropped the remix of Dogs as the teaser for it, and when the drums entered, I was both excited and horrified. Excited because the drums had never sounded better, and horrified because Wright was just gone. See, on the original mix, Wright has an organ part that runs through the first section of the song. It's an eerie part, one that adds a lot to the cynical tone of the song. But on the remix,
gone, reduced to atoms.
After a while, you can work on points for style.
the result here is that there is a massive hole in the soundscape of this part of Dogs. Guthrie tries to fill it by mixing up a piano part played by Wright that's been run through a Leslie speaker, or so I'm assuming because it sounds a lot like the treated pianos on Echoes. But it isn't enough. A massive piece of the song is just gone. It feels uncanny and weird. There really isn't a reason to do this at all. It makes the remix of Dogs a bit of a frustrating listen. On the one hand, sections of it sound incredible. The middle section with the clearer drums and guitar sounds unreal. The synth-driven section is incredible, but other parts of the song that used to have that organ part feel empty and wrong. The mix is almost exactly half better and half worse. This applies to the rest of the album too. If Wright was playing the organ at any point, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's either been mixed down or muted entirely. I just can't understand why someone would do this. Wright's organ is just as much an ingredient of the Pink Floyd sound as Gilmour's guitar or Ross's lyrics or Mason's reliable drumming. To de-emphasize Wright is to misunderstand what makes this band this bloody good. There are also a handful of production choices that just don't quite make sense. A synth line from Dogs slides out of sync at some point, lagging behind the rest of the song. How did this happen? This feels like a mistake. James, what were you cooking? So with all of this being said, what's the verdict? Which mix do I prefer? See, the thing with Animals is that it's a rare case of me not having a definitive preference. So far in this series, I've been able to identify a definite preferred mix. With Origin of Symmetry and A Momentary Lapse of Reason, it's the remix. With Monster by R.E.M., it's the original mix. But here, I don't really know. Both mixes have pros and cons. The original mix is a little muddier and occasionally a little on the flat side, but Rick Wright's presence is much better felt there as his organ work is much more prominent on that mix. On the other hand, he is mixed down in the 2018 mix, which is a massive knock against it, but the 2018 mix is also a lot more dynamic and clear, which brings the songs to life in exciting new ways. It's really frustrating. I wish of all Pink Floyd's studio albums, this would have been the one to get the Steven Wilson treatment. His shtick with his remixes of bands like Yes and King Crimson seems to be staying faithful to the original mixes while increasing clarity and dynamics, and I think that would have been the solution for Animals. In the end, I listen to both mixes of Animals reasonably regularly. It's not like Momentary Lapse of Reason where I've switched completely to the remix, or Monster where I stayed with the original. Both mixes have their merit. I will listen to either one depending on my mood. But what do you think? Give it a listen yourself and let me know. In the meantime, like, subscribe, ring that little bell, all that silly nonsense, and I will see you next time.